Welcome back to Healing with Sales. On this episode, I brought along a friend, Justine.
Hello.
She's going to discuss her process of seeking employment from out of state. She attended UMKC with me, but she's originally from Minnesota, right? Okay, so I just want to briefly talk about maybe why you chose UMKC.
Yeah, sure.
And like your emphasis, and just talk about employment, whatever you want to talk about.
Well, so like Tori said, I'm from Minnesota, and I had lived there my whole life, and I love it there, but when I was looking at grad schools, I was kind of thinking, like, I've always wanted to try living somewhere else, and it was the perfect time because, I wasn't married, I didn't have any kids, I didn't have, like, a permanent job that I was already in, so I felt like a program was kind of like the perfect excuse for me to, like, try living somewhere else for a temporary period of time. So I really applied just kind of all over, not just to Kansas City, and then I ended up here. I got in and I really liked the interview here and like the vibe that I got from the professors and the campus and stuff. So that's kind of how I ended up here.
Okay.
My emphasis is mental health. There were 3 there, couples and family, mental health, and
School counseling.
Okay, yeah. I knew I didn't want to work with kids, so it was easy to get that one out. And then I just felt like mental health was the easiest for me to like adapt later on. Like it was the least specialized, I guess. So that was kind of why I chose that, because I'm still sort of thinking about maybe more school.
You're thinking about getting like your PhD or your PsyD?
Yeah, maybe after I worked for a few years, and I just felt like if I got into a niche that I wasn't sure of too soon, couples and families, that so that's how I ended up here.
Okay, and then also talk briefly about like being away from home. How was that process with you doing grad school, and also like the employment? Like, are you going back home for employment, right?
Sure. Yeah. Well, first of all, being in school, I was really lucky. Well, I knew nobody when I came here. Like, no family, no friends. I didn't know anybody. And it was a lot harder to meet people than I thought it would be, because it's not like undergrad where there are like dorms and all these orientations and everybody's looking for friends. And our program is designed for working, part-time working and going. So people of all different like stages of life were in the program. So I didn't find like a lot of other people were looking to meet new friends. They'd already lived here and they were just going back to school.
Yeah, and the classes are at nighttime. So half the time people are tired. And do you want to socialize after school? Not really.
Yeah.
So.
Or they work during the day, or they're going back home to family, so they're just not really, like, they're nice, but they're not, it's a different experience than what I was having.
Right. Especially from
So just like a side note, one thing I did for myself, I've been a server before, so I got a job for like an extra social outlet and to meet people serving, because I didn't feel like I was getting everything I felt like I needed like built into the program. And I'm also lucky in that my family and I could afford for me to go home during some holidays, which definitely helped. It would have been would have been a lot harder if I could, never have flown home for Christmas. So I think that
helped the transition.
Yeah. I was really lucky in that way. It was hard to be away, but I'm planning to go back home. I like it here, but my whole support system's there. So I was looking for jobs there after graduation.
I guess another question is, how was like, now you're doing a lot of transitioning. You transition here, and now you're transitioning back home. Is there anything that's kind of difficult right now for you, or how are you coping with about to move back home, or doing new things? You're starting a new career. Yeah,
it's really hard. Well, first of all, I've gone to like counseling of my own almost my whole time here. I recommend that for anyone. It helps a lot with, like everything that we're talking about.
Yeah.
So that's been one thing for me. But yeah, it is hard with a lot of transitions, because like when I was applying to grad schools down here, I was not in a relationship. Then I ended up getting a partner before I moved down here. So we were doing long distance. That didn't work out, and now I've met somebody here. So it's a lot of it's tricky with relationships at this age. Yeah.
Trying to decide what's the best route for you, things of that nature. I can understand that.
Yeah.
Okay, so while you were seeking employment here, how did that look for you? Was it a lot of phone interviews or no interviews at all? Did you have to fly home? What happened?
Yeah. Well, so I did a lot of my personal applying and searching like through Indeed. I just found it to be user-friendly, and I honestly got a little bit overwhelmed trying to, like, branch out onto certain other things, so that was, like, a starting point for me.
Okay.
And then, so all the jobs that I really wanted were government jobs, and they have a very particular process of, like, applying the standard way. So I did all that online, and I will say I think it's slower than a lot of other jobs. Like, if you're, like, the process. For example, the job that I got, I will start May 16th, and I applied for that the day after Christmas.
Wow. Wow.
So just, it was hard because those were the jobs I wanted, so I had to be patient. But so once my applications went through, they reached out to me, and they a couple different ones offered phone interviews or in person if I was able to.
Okay.
And in one instance, I was able to set up 2 within the same week.
Okay,
so
nice.
So I traveled there because I was like, if I can, do a couple birds with one stone. But then the other one was kind of on its own, and I couldn't afford to go again.
Yeah.
So that one was a phone interview. And don't be scared of phone interviews, because that actually is the job I ended up getting, the one with the phone interview. I had, like, a bias, like, that's going to count against me.
Right.
It's hard to not be, like, scared about that. But usually they're pretty understanding, especially if you're far away.
Right.
I found.
Well, that's good. So let's kind of reverse it. I kind of jumped ahead, but I want to talk about your NCE process. Which state did you take? Like, did you do Kansas, Missouri, or what state did you take the NCE in?
I know, it's a tricky question. I took mine in Kansas.
Okay.
Because it was the only way I could take it earlier. So I took it in, what was it, the first half of January?
Yeah.
And otherwise, Missouri, I think I'm still a little confused on it, to be honest, but you have to, like, wait several months. And my intention the whole time was to transfer it to Minnesota, but I just wanted to get it out of the way. So I took it in Kansas in January. But one thing that was hard was, it turns out in both Kansas and Missouri, you need the NC for the first level licensure, and like you can be a mental health professional at that level. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's true.
In Minnesota, you need it for the lowest level, but you're not considered a mental health professional at the lowest level.
Oh,
so
really?
The NCE really gets you a lot less in Minnesota than Kansas and Missouri. So, like, had I known that earlier, I would have taken this other test that I'll need for the next level.
Wow.
So that was kind of like a bummer. I feel it's like kind of a waste, but
so that kind of speaks on, like, how when you attend an out-of-state school, not that we're saying that you shouldn't, but it is some difficulties that comes with it, and a lot of times you have to do your own research. I remember seeing you pull up other websites to try to figure out what exactly you needed for Minnesota. So what are some websites that you looked at, or what are some things that you had to further yourself with on your own?
Well, I will say, like, it was kind of a barrier, like Tori's saying, but a big part of that I'll put on myself, because a lot of those things I didn't look into soon enough, or as soon as I should have, because I heard, like, NC, it's a national exam, everyone needs it, I'm stressed, it's end, graduation's coming, I'm trying to sign up for that. When had I looked a couple months earlier and really like gotten deep into the Minnesota licensure stuff, I would have, seen that coming further away. So it is avoidable. I just kind of, like, got on the train and didn't get off.
So basically, if you're from out of state, start looking for way before we even start searching for anything. Okay.
Exactly. I don't recommend it for any state, but if you're in Kansas City, Missouri, and you go to UMKC, I feel like it's easier to get away with checking out some of that stuff later. And I kind of bit myself in the butt doing that. But you're asking kind of like where I looked. If you just Google your state and licensure, therapist licensure, they'll bring up the Behavioral Health Board for your state. So the one I was on was just the Behavioral Health Board of Minnesota, and that was like mostly everything I needed. But I didn't know that's where to go first of all.
Right.
I started with just like a Google, and then you find it through your state.
Okay. So I guess the last thing is, well, first, thank you for doing this with me. I know a lot of people had a lot of questions about out-of-state and, like, the application process, NCE. So hopefully this video can help summarize these things for you. Is there any last things that you would like to add? Or
there are, like, a lot of extra steps or inconveniences that may come with it, but, it's obviously not all bad. Like, I don't regret it at all, because I, as an individual, young adult, got to live somewhere else, really proved to myself that I can figure it out on my own. I met a lot of people along the way that I hope to keep in contact with, and it helps just to have some connections, because even though I'm planning on living in Minnesota for a while, you never know if I ever want to relocate. Now I know some people here. So it's not all like, don't get discouraged if you're interested in doing it.
Exactly. So hopefully this encouraged everybody, and please come back to listen to more Healing with Sales. Bye-bye.